By 2025, Gen Z is going to make up a quarter of the workforce. And, we honestly want to do that effectively. However, if you're having trouble recruiting, retaining, leveling up, or training your new hires, or even just your team as a whole, I think it's very important that we have a discussion about skills. What works, what doesn't, what's outdated, what needs to be innovated with, and what direction we're all moving in. So, in this week's episode, let's talk about the skills of the new, the old, and sometimes the ugly. Keeping everything simple, let's jump right in. The first thing that I really want to stress here is that no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, you don't know what you aren't taught. I'm going to stress that again. You don't know what you aren't taught. The reason I emphasize this right now is there has been a meme or a reel that's been going around of this, I believe it's a baby boomer or Gen X comedian who is talking about how for Gen Z, it's this kind of baby group that doesn't know how to do cursive, doesn't like these in-person meetings, and it, has some level of truth to it, sure. But at the same time, we don't know what we never learn in school. Cursive's gone. We don't know about, sometimes effective communication. That's never actually truly taught to you. You're taught how to write a good essay. You have your intro, you got your 3 and 4 paragraphs, you got your outro. Great. That doesn't necessarily help communication in real life, because if I was going to go and talk to one of my good friends and say, all right, here's my intro, and I do word vomit for 5 minutes, and then I move on to, all right, and then moving forward through the next paragraph, that's not how we interact. That's not how we communicate. And this overall notion that you don't know what you aren't taught, I think is something that we just have to truly understand from a more practical standpoint. I joked about, never sending a fax until at some point earlier this year, and that's true. I still haven't had anyone tell me that they learned in high school or in college how to send a fax, because it's still important, but to my understanding, it feels like outdated tech that's getting more and more obsolete, especially with, the invention of like DocuSign. You can sign documents online now. Pretty nifty. And it continues, where cursive, that's been mostly phased out of schools to my understanding. I learned cursive when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. Cool. And I haven't ever needed it since. I have my signature. I could stand to improve that, sure. But also, there's not many other instances where I'm going to need to use cursive. I can't really think of one off the top of my head where that's going to be so important that, it's a make or break for me. And this conversation can get also flipped on its head pretty easily. And just as we don't know cursive, we don't want to have to continue to explain to some of our older coworkers or the older people within our generations and whatnot of how do you turn this Word document into a PDF? How do you upload this PDF into Google Docs and be able to then actually edit it and type it on there? How do you share your screen from your phone to your TV or use AirDrop? And this kind of brings it back to this idea of like the home economic class, where now that's not really something that we are given the opportunity to really take in school. I know there's some special schools and some special classes here and there, but it's not the requirement anymore. I would have loved a class when I was in high school about, how to manage my savings account, how to change a flat tire, how to, prep and cook a meal without having to order takeout. All the things that I have learned at this point in time, but I learned on my own. I went and found the YouTubers. I went and found the books, and I purposely made the effort. However, it's not my place to then judge and say if the next generation after me or someone, within my generation, if one of people says, I never learned how to, balance a checkbook. Me neither. You know what I have learned? How to invest in my 401k and my Roth IRA. That feels pretty effective to me. I don't use checks because there's no need for me to. It's obsolete in the way in which cursive is obsolete. And this is me stressing, again, the kind of ridiculous nature that, especially when the conversation is, sure, checks actually do still hold value. They are very important, especially for not everyone wanting to be online, not everyone wanting digital technology or a bank always having access to their stuff. That's fine. It's still just having that active conversation that things are different, that not only are the things that we're never going to use again, and there's also things that we're going to use rarely, but if we're never taught it, we're never going to know how to use it properly. And with speaking of what's obsolete, then there's also the other piece to this where we have to talk about and think about what are the skills that are really being effective? What are the skills that are really helping us grow and be impactful members of society and also impactful members of teams and jobs and corporations? The very first thing that comes to mind is just soft skills or people skills, whatever you want to call them. The ability to actively have tough conversations, the ability to, do conflict resolution, to de-escalate situations, the ability to actively listen and not just, listen to respond, but listen to understand and truly understand. All things that you will probably, if you're at some latter stage in your career, have been told that, hey, this is what's really important right now. And then to also then look back and think, well, that's annoying that I've been told is important, but no one's fully actively taught me what this looks like. No one's fully showed me what this looks like. And one of the most popular books for this being the How to Win Friends and Influence People, how to actively build your network, how to build your relationships by having good conversations, having that kind of mentality around how am I going to speak and understand, and how am I going to truly listen to them so that when that person that I'm interacting with feels like I'm truly present, like I'm truly there, and actively want to get to know them. And then one of the big ones that really bothers me anymore is conflict resolution, because Gen Z is very conflict avoidant, and that's kind of hard to deny. But at the same time, if our examples have always been shove your feelings down or whatever it is, don't talk about it, you can be passive aggressive, that's fine, but just don't address the elephant in the room. Or when you do, you may feel like someone blows it out of proportion, or they'll make you feel like it's blown out of proportion. These are some of the realities in which having no good example of conflict resolution, of how to navigate some rocky terrain and these, conversations that sometimes can be as smooth as a river and at other times can be rushing rapids. If we aren't taught that type of skill set and that type of understanding, despite how important it is, then it's going to feel like we're either lagging behind or it's just going to be a begrudging time because one group will antagonize another for not knowing it, despite not taking the time to show them how to do it properly, how to do it in a healthy way, and how to continue to evolve that skill set. A statistic from Gen Guru shows that about 24%, so a quarter of all Gen Z, want to work in a job and a career that allows us to hone our skills and develop new ones. And I like that. I like the fact that 1 out of every 4 of us wants to be able to learn something new. So if you came out of high school and college knowing everything, then I feel like it'd be kind of one of those like dystopian universes, like The Giver almost, where it's like, ooh, we know all the answers, we know exactly what to do, and then it just ends up being like this huge dumpster fire almost of, wow, this is actually definitely a really bad idea. But we all thought we knew the best, so we went with it anyways, and we didn't really question it. Again, not really the best course of action. But for those of us in Gen Z, and I honestly think a lot of us as well, we know that being able to learn constantly is one of the benefits of having a job and a career. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that learning doesn't stop the second you leave school, whether that's high school, university, grad school, whatever it is. Your learning should continue throughout your entire life. And if you have a job or in a company or a corporation that encourages that, that is a good find. That right there is a good benefit, because it's not just keeping you in your spot, keeping you in your lane because they need someone to fill that seat. It's instead saying, hey, you're going to leave at some point, and that's okay. We want to equip you with as many skills as possible so you'll be as effective as possible while you're here. And then when you go on to your next adventure, take those with you and go do something new. Go build something exciting. Go take that next step forward. To me, my thought process goes to the idea of like startups, where I imagine one of the ideal circumstances would be people join a startup and they stay for hopefully a long time. It becomes a unicorn. It goes really well, IPOs, whatever the situation may be. And then people, having gained all these skill sets, go leave and start their own startup. They go leave and start something new. They take that next step. And I think that kind of mentality would be so beneficial for so many companies if it wasn't so focused on this idea of you have to stay here, don't leave, company loyalty till you die. Because as I mentioned in my last podcast, the world's different. Our careers are different. Company loyalty still exists, but also at the same time, our jobs and our careers, but at the same time, our jobs should not be our lives. We don't live to work, we work to live. This also means that what comes out of this is just different, where I don't want it to be this idea that we're bringing this whole new fanatical idea into the workplace. It's simply a new way of looking at what a job and what a career could be. It could be this source of learning. It could be this source of growth and development. And that is, I would say, a different perspective, because anymore, and this is comparing what things used to be like. This is comparing that you could stay with one company fresh out of high school, potentially. You could make enough to support your family. If you continue to work your way up, you get the nice suits, you get the company car, you'd have a pension, and you know you'd be secure in retirement once you reach that age. And that's not the world we live in anymore. That is vastly different as to what we expect going into the jobs. And so we want to not only, give something to a company if it's one we really want to work for, we want to also know what are we going to get from the company for dedicating our time to that. Because one of the most valuable resources in the whole world, actually the most valuable resource for each of us in our whole world, is our time. And if we're going to choose to dedicate time to a company, to a job, to a team, then I believe it's not unreasonable to think, well, how am I also growing within this team, within this company? Because so much time is being dedicated to it that you want to have that good return on your investment. You want to have a good ROI for all the effort and energy you're putting into it. And I think that's fair. And while I think it's fair, I don't want this to feel like I'm saying you have to always get something out of it. You have to 100%. If you don't, then you've made a bad choice. Sometimes people do like being able to just follow that kind of set path. Some people do like taking it slow and steady. It's honestly a spectrum. It's just what I believe is that you should continue to learn something, and you should continue to push yourself and challenge yourself. Maybe not for that promotion, maybe not for that, pay raise, but just because you truly want to. Though, granted, promotion and pay raises are quite nice. And then speaking of promotions and pay raises and everything, it's also still then this next idea that with the new skills that we want to learn and want to develop, it also comes kind of in tandem with the fact that in 5 to 10 years, the jobs that we have now may be gone. And there may be a new entire set of jobs that have come into the foray at this point in time. The best example right now that we're all familiar with is AI. So there's a lot of concern of like, ooh, AI is going to steal our jobs and we're all going to be replaced by robots and it's going to be like Wall-E and we're just going to be slaves to the machines. Okay, yeah, I had fun with that, but that's not the point. Bring it back in. It's this overall notion that, and this is historically backed up with every, I believe it's every 5-10 years, so within a decade or so, the jobs that used to exist, a lot of them will vanish, and that naturally happens with innovation and with change. And then new jobs are created that we fill the roles in, and that means new skills, new ideas, new knowledge, and all of that is expected. So with AI coming in, then it's expecting that, hey, some knowledge-based work will be computerized. We won't have to dedicate time to that. However, that means a whole new skill set, a whole new job category could develop from there. Like now we have people that are programming AI language models that are using ChatGPT to distinctly get a certain response by changing one word, changing the annotation, changing how they structure the intro to that sentence versus the outro, and how that impacts the answer that they got. And overall, that is a new job, a new field in linguistics that can emerge because of that innovation. And then we have AI engineers, where they've been around for a while, but now these large language models are pushing it even further. And the skills that they're going to need are going to be different. Some of them will be the same, but there's also going to be new ones that are going to come into the picture to help them do their job effectively. And that's why it's so important that we do take the time to focus on what are the timeless skills. What are the things that no machine, no innovation is going to take away? What are the skills that will help you be a better person, be a better friend, be a better team member, whatever it is? Focusing on those skills is going to not only improve your personal life, but then also just the career that you're going to lead. And I think that's an important benefit to acknowledge. Ultimately, it goes back to what I said originally, that we don't know what we aren't taught. And if that frustrates you, then here's the kicker here. Step up and help teach us. I acknowledge, though, that you can't help someone who's not willing to help themselves first and foremost. You can only do it so much for someone that truly has no drive and no initiative to want to learn to say, know how to have effective conflict, how to effectively de-escalate a situation. But at the same time, if you're frustrated that people just don't seem to know this, then you should help them figure it out. You should then be stepping up and saying, let me teach you this because this helped me a lot in my career, and I imagine it's going to help you a lot in yours. Let me show you and not just judge you for not knowing this. Because truly, what's common sense now is going to be different 10, 15, 20 years down the line. The fact that places in America used to leave and still do leave their doors unlocked at night is just mind-blowing to me, especially with the rise in true crime documentaries and podcasts. We know it's a bad idea, yet some people still do it, and that kind of goes against the grain of common sense. But not everything for everyone is common sense. I've been victim to this myself, but it's, again, just bringing it back to if it's frustrating, if it's something that you would like to see done differently, take the time to teach that person. Take the time to learn how to teach somebody this, because the more you help someone else with it, the more you're going to understand it. It's one of the basics that you learn in school and university is that if you can effectively teach someone else a subject or a topic, the better your understanding of it will become. And then as a whole, everyone benefits, everyone levels up, and everyone grows together. Let me know down in the comments, what are some of the skills that you wish were still around today, or that you feel should have already disappeared by today? I'm curious to know which ones you guys are keeping an eye on. And with that, that's the end of the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out the podcast so much. If you're listening to on a podcast app, be sure you give us a rating. It helps other people discover the show. I hope you have an amazing day, you amazing people, and go out there and do great things.